This sport is so fantastic and so epic, beautiful, exciting, adrenaline filled. Let's dig right into it. If you're new here, consider giving a subscription and commenting your thoughts below. And today I'm going to break down week 6, give my new top 25, my thoughts, takeaways, and finally list my losers and winners of the week. Man, it's good to be back home. Good to be back in an area with all my resources to analyze and just talk about the sport that I love to talk about the most. So there have been some changes. If you're just a fan of college football, you know A&M beat Alabama and Iowa beat Penn State in a very odd way. We'll get to those two games specifically. And also that a lot of other teams in the top 10 had potentially their moments. And I'm not talking about my top 10. I'm talking about, the AP poll top 10. There were teams who, had their moments per se and such. Like Michigan being one of them, Oklahoma being one of them. All of them besides Cincinnati and Ohio State were tested to some degree. And they either won it or lost it. Georgia, I think, is the best team in the nation, and it doesn't even matter if their offense is the level of Vanderbilt, which it's not. It's very good. They are Iowa with a better defense than Iowa and a far superior offense. That is frightening. And Iowa's a really good football team. I think Iowa at a neutral site, and especially if they hosted anyone, would do what they did to Penn State. And granted, Penn State was without Clifford, but let me give you a picture. And Kirk Herbstreit said this about Iowa. They are the guy in the ring in the second round when everyone's bleeding and they get you in this chokehold. What Iowa did to Penn State is they out-toughed them. And I'm saying that because, no disrespect to Penn State, but Iowa's injuring all of these Penn State players. None of the Iowa players are going down. And it's not a knack or anything. Injuries happen and there are some factors you can't always control, but Iowa proved in a certain regard that they were the tougher team, and they slowly constricted Penn State's defense into giving up a near 50-yard touchdown pass from Spencer Petras that really shouldn't have happened. Iowa is not the offensive team to get you big plays. They just aren't. And that play right there, the adrenaline, it showed to me that Iowa, they may not have the greatest talent, the greatest schemes, but they just out-tough you. And Cincinnati isn't, not in the same category, and I'm a Big Ten guy, so I'll talk more about the Big Ten teams to a certain degree. Cincinnati, I think, has proven itself to be a playoff contender, and I think they should remain in the top 4 unless they start playing some really sloppy football. They destroyed Temple, they beat Notre Dame, they're just playing some really solid football right now. Ohio State's back on track, they blew out Maryland. What's new? Alabama they haven't lost to an unranked team since, you guessed it, 2007. Nick Saban has never lost to a former assistant before, and it snaps, I think, a 19-game win streak, which is insane. Alabama, I still think they're winning the West, but they have some defensive issues and all-around issues they need to work on if they want to beat Georgia in that SEC championship game. Michigan is interesting because you look at Michigan and they are improving, and luckily their early game slate has turned out to be a lot easier than what's coming up. Michigan is a team that I actually believe, this is contrary to most people's opinions because a lot of people think Michigan State, Penn State, or Ohio State will beat them. Michigan can control its own destiny. And that sounds very cliche, but this team is disciplined. This team fights hard. This team went into a more hostile environment than I thought Memorial Stadium was at a night game. And after making some key mistakes, they still won. they pulled out despite, having some pretty bad mistakes, blown coverages, a pick thrown, a nearly muffed punt. I mean, just crazy things, and Michigan still came out on top. Kentucky, Kentucky may not have the greatest offense, but Kentucky has a solid defense. Will Levis is doing enough at QB to propel them to the spot they are. And after beating Florida, I think Kentucky is going to win 10 regular season games. They might even win 11, and that will be insane. They're 6-0 for the first time since Bear Bryant coached that team. Absolutely crazy. You may think number 7's too high, and depending on how they play Georgia, they're either staying like close to that or they might drop a good amount of places. Oklahoma, I hate to say it, but that was a shootout. You almost lost to a Texas team who, just kind of looking at the stats, doesn't really have a defense, period, amen. Don't know what to think of you yet. Your future performances should tell us a lot. Coastal Carolina, I've been high on them from the beginning. And, seeing how Penn State lost and just how BYU lost, I think it was finally time for them to jump up to 9. They've been blowing out all the little guys, and I have a feeling they might go undefeated in the Sun Belt Conference. Penn State, you're 10th because until Clifford's healthy, I don't see you beating anyone above you. I mean, maybe Coastal, and granted, again, I'm high on Coastal, but everywhere else, Taquan Roberson will do nothing against any of the teams above you. You might as well be 2018 Michigan State with a more talented wide receiver core and running back core. It's not... Clifford's health, in my opinion, makes or breaks your season. Ole Miss, they beat Arkansas, who I still think is a pretty good team. Arkansas, we're not going to really talk about them. I left them at the same place at 18th. Ole Miss, they're just really good offensively, and they have just good enough of a defense to help them out in clutch moments, like stopping the 2-point conversion. Michigan State, explosive offense. Kenneth Walker is something else. Indiana will be a test to a certain degree. It'll be a preview, I think, in some cases, for the Michigan game and other games going forward, as Indiana is probably a tougher team than over half the teams that they've already played. Arizona State, they're 5-1 in the pack. They're facing Utah, who is undefeated in conference and just destroyed USC. Jaden Daniels is playing well, and they're 5-1. They only lost to a one-loss BYU team on the road, and things look to be good for the Sun Devils. Oregon keeps dropping because they just haven't performed. Their performance against Stanford was disappointing. Seeing how Arizona State dominated Stanford made me think even less of Oregon. And I don't know. I think if Anthony Brown continues to be your quarterback, you're not going many places. Oklahoma State had a bye. Same thing with North Carolina State. So after A&M, we're skipping straight to Wake Forest. I already did mention Arkansas. A&M, you beat the number 1 team. Zach Calzada showed that he had some strengths with him. Your team came up in clutch moments. I think you could bounce back to possibly being the second best team in your own division, if not the first, if Bama loses another game and you went out. Wake Forest, came up clutch against Syracuse. You are... I don't even know how long it's been since Wake Forest has started out 6-0. This is crazy. Dave Clawson, if he reaches the ACC championship game, he might deserve Coach of the Year award. Florida, winning against Vanderbilt does nothing. That shows me nothing. And only being up 21 points in the first half was kind of disappointing. Notre Dame barely skated by. SMU came back from Navy. BYU, though, what was it? 4 turnovers against Boise State and a bloodletting. I think you'll beat Baylor, but I'm just you're definitely not a top 10 team. San Diego State, got another win against New Mexico, and Pitt, despite having a bye, I think deserved to enter my top 25. That is my top 25. If you have any disagreements or agreements, comment your thoughts below. I love bouncing off ideas and discussing things. My biggest takeaways, though, Georgia, let's get this out of the way. Georgia is Nick Saban's first national title team at Alabama, reincarnate. Georgia right now, the 2021 Georgia, football team, the Dogs, as we all know. This team is crazy on defense. They don't even allow 5 points a game on defense. I don't know how they do this. Oh, yes, they do. 5.5. 2009 Alabama, 32 points a game, 22nd in the nation. Allowed 11.7 points a game. That's second in the nation. Georgia, 5.5 points allowed, first in the nation. 39.8 scored, 12th in the nation. And, the Alabama games, of course, are factoring in the national title, the SEC championship game. I mean, Georgia still in the future. They have Kentucky coming up. They have Florida coming up. And, Tennessee. Those 3 games will be their tougher games out of their next 6-game, stretch. But they're looking a lot like Nick Saban's older teams. Strong, solid, disciplined, tough defensive football, but they don't have the best on offense. It'll be interesting to see how this team is, going forward. And I honestly do think that right now, I said before the season, it's them or Alabama who wins this year. I think Georgia is now the clear front runner to win the national championship. The Big Ten has made history this season. You have, in the AP poll, top 25, you have Ohio State, you have Iowa, you have Penn State, you have Michigan, you have Michigan State, all in the top 10. All of them. Michigan State at 10th, Michigan at 8th, Penn State at 7th, Ohio State at 6th, Iowa at 2nd. It's crazy. I think ESPN, not maybe ESPN, but it was like College Football on Fox made a post on Instagram saying this is the first time this has happened. Absolutely crazy. And I get that these teams will beat up on each other. I do think that you look at, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, that's 4 teams in the same division. One of them will likely be, if 2 of them are truly good teams, one of them might actually be end the season outside of the top 20, which is crazy to think about. But Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State, none of them have played each other yet. None of them. We saw what happened, when Penn State and Iowa faced off against each other. Penn State has to face Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Again, without Clifford, they could lose all 3 of those games and finish 8-4. Michigan could lose to Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State and finish 9-3. Ohio State, as good as they look, could also, don't think it'll happen, very unlikely, could lose to Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State for some reason and go 8-4. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this division is tough. And even though I think Michigan State might be a little overrated among other things, and I do have some concerns for my own team in Michigan, it's a tough division. And there will be aspects of how it plays out that will certainly be unpredictable. In Oklahoma with Caleb Williams, of course being featured in this image, they are contenders now. They did not change ranking. And a lot of that is because Texas played them closer than I anticipated. But the way they came back was impressive. You bench Rattler. Oklahoma's running back had an amazing performance, Kennedy Brooks. And Williams, to heck with it. He was, 3rd and 19. Dodges, scrambles in the pocket, runs up to the line of scrimmage, off of his feet, throws a dime to the end zone. And the second I saw that, I'm like, well, this game's Oklahoma's. It doesn't matter if the 2-point conversion is converted or not. Oklahoma has been like chipping away at the lead since the second quarter, and now they've gained the momentum. They've completely gained the momentum. And Texas, this is why I don't like Texas, because Texas has been a team that has been compared to my team in Michigan and praised over it, despite having less success. And, I mean, we all know Michigan's bad at handling momentum changes. My Michigan team survived a momentum change this week. Texas imploded on itself, which is part of the reason I don't have Oklahoma ranked higher than 8th. But if Oklahoma continues, if they play the way they did that second half, this team can contend to win the national title. Coach O is done. Not going to say much more about it because I'm not an expert on the hot seat stuff, nor do I have any inside communication, and probably won't for years, possibly the rest of my life. Actually, probably the latter as well. He's not going to survive. You can't be at LSU and lose to Kentucky. I don't care if Kentucky wins the national title. You also can't lose to Auburn at home. You can't lose to UCLA on the road. It's ridiculous. And Coach O making the comments he made at UCLA will further bury him into the grave. And him saying that he was surprised at Kentucky's rushing attack when Rodriguez is known to be a good running back makes him... You already know what I'm going to say. It does not look good for LSU right now. And last but not least, the chaos is just getting started. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This week was crazy. This week looks to be boring. Let me tell you something. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's say Kentucky beats Georgia. It'll get even crazier. And even if they don't, I guarantee you there will be some insane things. I mean, Michigan State being 6-0 is already as insane as it is. And finally, my losers and winners. North Carolina lost to Florida State 35-25. And Josh Pate mentioned, listening to his takeaways, that there was at some point in the game where Florida State had a 35-7 run on North Carolina. Let that sink in. The team who, I mean, in the end, I'm glad I put them out of my top 10. This team, ever since that VT loss, they lost to VTech, and I was hoping they would because, I mean, it just like chaos. The way they lost that game, I'm like, this team should not enter the top 25 again. And granted, at some point, I did add them back into my top 25. I think they beat, what was it? They crushed another team, and, they looked good enough. I'm like, okay, come back in. I regret it. This team here is one of the biggest disappointments so far this year. Mac Brown said, well, you all overrated us. And sure, but everyone has a right to an opinion. At the end of the day, we're people sitting here voicing our opinions. You're the coach. And losing to Florida State is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Rutgers and Maryland, I'm not going to cover this as much as North Carolina, but if you looked at the results, it's pretty safe to say, and I'm saying this with the opinion that Michigan State is overrated, and with the opinion that Ohio State, winning 66-17 over Maryland isn't as impressive as I thought it would have been. Rutgers and Maryland are just being back to what they were with improvements, but compared to the rest of the conference, it's not going to do much in a certain sense. Mike Locksley is still Mike Locksley, and Rutgers has a lot to build on. Rutgers is going in the better direction out of the two, though. Spencer Rattler got benched. His Heisman odds are over. There's no way he should be a first-round pick. End of discussion. Sean Clifford got injured. There were rumors that he has broken ribs, which means he would be out for the majority, if not all of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are also rumors that he's going to be healthy in like a week, 2 or 3, at most by the OSU game. It still sucks, though, and, Iowa won that game fair and square, but if we hypothesize that he didn't get injured, I would agree that Penn State would have won this game. The winners. Wake Forest is 6-0. They were behind Syracuse. They won in overtime. Dave Clawson and Mel Tucker. I thought Mel Tucker after the 6-0 start, I'm like, he's going to be my coach of the year. If Dave Clawson reaches the ACC championship game and, has a better record and his team's doing, I might have to nominate him coach of the year instead. It depends. Wake Forest is really impressing me. I mean, I thought they'd have the better record than State, but they're just didn't think they'd be undefeated, if you know what I mean. The SEC East is a big winner. Kentucky beating LSU and Georgia just smothering Auburn. Some of the most beautiful wins I have seen. And Florida beat Vanderbilt. The SEC East, the top teams there are improving, and they all won. Caleb Williams, just for leading his team back from a massive deficit to overcome and to win in that way. And, by the end of this year, who knows? This kid might get some votes in that Heisman Trophy ranking. Jimbo Fisher is last, but certainly not least. Guy's sketchy. Guy might have destroyed Florida State. One thing we all cannot argue now. Him, outside of maybe Kirby Smart, simply for beating Nick Saban, might be the best Nick Saban assistant in history at this moment. Won a national title. Only lost to one of the best Alabama teams, maybe the best Alabama team ever in last year. Only lost to that team. Won the Orange Bowl. And he had some trouble earlier this year. Haynes King being injured, Calzada having to come in. Team was kind of a mess. And they get this upset. And the whole outlook for A&M changes now. A&M could go 8-5. And this season would be a success because of the Alabama win. That is my opinion. Thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. And do the same even if you don't like this video. I have a lot of different content regarding college football, cover different games, mainly a Big Ten guy. But I love guys who disagree with me and have different opinions. It's always nice to have those people in the comment sections below. Thank you all for watching. Again, join this awesome community and help us reach 2,000 subscribers. See you all later.